Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of the National Youth Dialogue on the Decade of Skills and the Future of Work. My name is Ayushka, the Economist and Systems Design Lead at the Citra Social Innovation Lab, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Before we begin, I'd like to note that simultaneous translations in Sinhala and Tamil are both available, and those options can be selected at the bottom of the screen if you wish. And we also have simultaneous translations in English language, sign language. We're here today to discuss what the future of work, especially in Sri Lanka, is going to look like. Globalization and digitalization have led to massive shifts in the way we live, the jobs we perform, and the way we work. And the pandemic has only further disrupted our labor markets. We've seen a rise in the adoption of technology, including in areas such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. But also, as a result of the pandemic, we've seen visible shifts with regard to e-commerce, automation, and remote working. In order to keep up with this changing landscape, it's evident that we will need different cognitive skills and capabilities. This is true not just with regard to technology, but also with regard to critical thinking, problem solving, analysis, creativity, self-management, and flexibility. These are the skills that the World Economic Forum sees as the most sought after and important in this changing world. So during session, we'll attempt to unpack and identify some concrete recommendations on the steps that Sri Lanka needs to take to keep up with these changes and to ensure that the country is able to meet the government's target of a labor force that is 90% skilled. Perhaps it will also provide some insights on the skills that we, the youth of Sri Lanka, need to equip ourselves with going forward in the future. To kick off today's session, I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed panel, who we're fortunate to have on board with us to cover a diverse range of perspectives on the subject. Ms. Deepa Liyanage, the Secretary of the Presidential Task Force on Education Affairs and Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Skills Development, Vocational Education, Research and Innovation. Mr. Damitha Wickramasinghe, the Chairman of the Vocational Training Authority. Mr. Chamila Pereira, the Head of Human Resources for Sri Lanka and the Maldives at HSBC. Mr. Yasas Abe Wickrama, Policy Programs Manager for Sri Lanka from Facebook, and Mr. Manish Joshi from the Education Sector Team at the New Delhi UNESCO Cluster Office. How this discussion will work is each panelist will speak for 5 to 7 minutes, after which there will be a 10-minute Q&A session where the floor will be open for questions from everyone participating. But do feel free to ask any of your questions on the Q&A chat box, and we will do our best to answer throughout the entire session. May I now invite Ms. Deepa Liyanage, the Secretary to the Presidential Task Force on Education Affairs and the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Skills Development, to touch on the government's priorities for what they're calling the Decade of Skills and what key policies are required to achieve this vision. Ms. Deepa, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation for United Nations Development Program in organizing this kind of youth dialogue, especially on very timely topic on decade of skills and the future of the work. So as we all know, the Sri Lanka has always gifted from a rich culture of very ancient rich culture of learning and studying. So today, with the we all are gifted to the nation because of the free education, and we received free education, and due to this free education system, we all ensured the easy access to the education system. However, despite of all these situation, now country is moving away from the historical focus of holistic skills and practical based learning and the environment. So identifying the importance of skills development and the practical experience development of the citizens, the government in his policy document, the Vistas of Prosperity, put more emphasis and more attention on the skills sector development, and especially the knowledge and the practical experience development of the community. So apart from that, during the recent COVID-19 pandemic, His Excellency the President, by his directive, declared appointed a presidential task force on Sri Lanka's education affairs 31st March last year. That is mainly to continue the education system without any setback to the primary, secondary, or tertiary education, as well as to look into the modernized education system with all modernizing all aspects of the all sectors of the education. So with all these things, Presidential Task Force on Education Affairs given its recommendation mainly focusing on the reducing labor force in the country to 10% by 2025. That was one of the main target of given in the Vistas of Prosperity policy document, and also envision to position Sri Lanka as an epicenter of education in the South Asian region, as well as creating a global technocrats within the country. So we all know that the vocational and technical education sector within the country has a long history. Actually, we all know that Maradana Technical College, which was established about 10 decades ago. So it has a long history. However, only in 1990, the Parliament enacted the Tertiary and Vocational Education Act, and since then there are 300 about 300 government sector vocational training institutes together with about 400 private sector entities. So recently concluded budget discussion also focus on the increasing the student enrollment for vocational and technical education sector. Actually, during the budget discussion, Prime Minister declared that the student intake for the vocational education sector will increase by uh, nearly 50%. So, but not only increasing the education enrollment, but we are now focusing on the upgrading content and course development, especially to cater the demand of the private sector of the country. We all know that the private sector skill matching is very important, and ensuring the commitment of the ministry to cater this country's requirement for the vocational sector education upliftment. 2 days ago, the ministry, together with its institutions, declared a national program called Skills Sri Lanka National Program. That is mainly with a view of enhancing the technical skills and vocational education opportunities in the country. Apart from that, more interestingly, the last January, the President, by an extraordinary gazette notification, the ministry was mandated to deliver another important task, that is establishing city universities, mainly focusing on regional requirements. So there will be 10 city universities, and the government has allocated 1 billion rupees during this year to initiate the first phase of establishing city universities. City universities structure mainly focusing on skills development and the entrepreneurship development of our society and the youth. Apart from that, under the Skills Sri Lanka National Program, we are, as a ministry, we are planning to enhance infrastructure and other facilities of the technical colleges and all vocational and technical training education sectors, and the government has allocated 3,000 million rupees for under this year's budget. So there are, apart from that, we are now in negotiating with several funding agencies, and we have already initiated bilateral discussions with the government of India. Today, of course, we had one discussion to get bilateral cooperation to enhance the sector development, because we observe that that kind of technical support from through bilateral cooperation is very much important to enhance the capacities of the sector. So with all these initiatives, I can once again emphasize that the state ministry of skills development, vocational education, and research and innovation is committed to enhance the skills sector of the people, especially the youth of our country. And we are always there to deliver our duties there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deepa, on that brief overview of what the government is actually doing to further the skills sector in Sri Lanka. That was really insightful. May I now invite Mr. Daminta Wickramasinghe, the chairman of the Vocational Training Authority, to speak about how the vocational training sector is positioned to support Sri Lanka through the vision that Ms. Deepa just outlined.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ayushka. Thank you very much, UNDP, for this opportunity. I think, first of all, on behalf of Vocational Training Authority, I would like to, give a brief description of what VTA is and what VTA has been doing for these past 25 years. So basically, as Ms. Deepa correctly disclosed, Sri Lanka has 400 vocational training centers, government, private sector put together. Out of those 400 vocational training centers, 233 lie under the Vocational Training Authority of Sri Lanka. So in that sense, we are the largest player by far in the vocational training market. And up to now, before 2019, when the new government got into power and we were appointed, the institute had been training close to 35,000 students. But through our studies and synergizing available resources, this year we are targeting to enroll 75,000 students, and on that 75,000, about 10,000 of the courses will happen online. So that is also first for a government institution in that magnitude. And concentrating on how VTA, if I talk about the VTA experience and how VTA is taking up the challenge of Chief President's upliftment of the labor force. Chief President wants to uplift the labor force to 90% of skilled labor, and also Chief President's vision is to increase the amount of skilled migrant workers. Whereas now Sri Lanka annually has about 250,000 migrant workers. Out of that, we have not even achieved 10% of skilled migration. So Chief President has given a specific task to VTA this year to set up specialized centers for skilled migration, and given a very, sort of practical and very tedious task of producing another 25,000 for skilled migration. For that also we have laid up plans, and we will be starting that special program by May this year. Now, touching on technology, in terms of what VTA from the inception, now in 1995, when the current Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was the Labour Minister, VTA was established by an extension of a small unit which was under the Labour Ministry called the Human Resource Division. So little by little, we have become the largest player in the market. And also, we cater for 22 trades. That includes from like generic trades like construction up to, I don't know whether you are aware, but we are fourth industry, 4IR ready. Now we have a state-of-the-art center in Orugodawatha, Colombo called the Korean Tech. So in Korean Tech, we offer robotics, mechatronics, as well as all these new 4IR ready courses. And the plan for the next 2 years is to have 4IR ready courses in all the provinces initially, and take it to a district level. because now we are closely having discussions with the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka as well as the Export Development Board, because the simple fact being, even if we produce technicians to be 4IR ready, the local industry has to be ready to absorb them. Otherwise, we will be producing technicians that have no value in the local market. Currently, even now, when we concentrate on these technicians to be exported to the foreign market, we serve a dual purpose. Why? The simple fact being, now once they do their employment there and they come back, it will be a natural transfer of technology and know-how. Because now in places like Japan and Korea, even Romania has opened up for Sri Lanka. So European market is open now for skilled migration. Once they do their, once they finish their tenure and come back to Sri Lanka, they will be naturally bringing back the technology know-how. So that itself will have a dual benefit for Sri Lanka, as well as Chief President in his new concept is looking at establishing vocational centers along with the new industrial parks in the country. So currently we are having discussions with Honorable Minister Jeevan Thondaman, because in the upcountry they are looking to have 10 industrial zones. And in that, we are planning to become the technology training partner for these specific industries. So that is in a nutshell what VTA does and how we are focusing on enhancing, empowering the skills of decade of skills. Beg your pardon.
Thank you so much, Namita, for that. What you said about the vocational training centers actually being 4IR ready was really interesting, and I'd like to touch on that at some point later on in the discussion as well. May I now invite Mr. Chamila Pereira, the Head of Human Resources for Sri Lanka and Maldives at HSBC, to speak a little bit on the role of the private sector as both employers and collaborators in actually supporting the country to build a skilled labor force going forward.
Thank you, Aishka. I'm really excited to be in the National Youth Dialogue, and thanks for the organization for inviting me. I'm more interested to see the 223 youth who has joined this session. That excites me to be here for the right reasons. And so your introduction had two parts for it. One is, what is the private sector doing in terms of skill and development of as an employer, and for the wider society, right? So I will take these two parts, and from a HSBC context, try to give some insights for the attendees who has joined this forum. So as we all know, the world is changing along with workforce expectations. This is inevitable, and that's a fact, right? So both within HSBC and beyond, we need to consciously decide how we manage to this change, attract and retain diverse group of talent, and be ready for the future. So given the pandemic situation and what we are going through right now, most of the private organizations and even some of the government organizations, where people are working from home, there's flexible working arrangements, etc. So we did some of the research, and majority of our people have told us that they have enjoyed working flexibility and remotely, and do not want to return to office-based ways of working typically before this global pandemic. However, there are many who do still prefer office-based working. We would need to provide employees with a choice and flexibility on where and when we get them to office and the job done, right? Whilst also enabling opportunity to connect, collaborate, and learn together. So that's the challenge I think every organization would have in terms of the future of work, with the wider team of this youth dialogue, right? The future of work, which we would face as we go by. Research also shows that it is expected that 42% of core skills required to perform existing jobs now will change by 2022, and more than a billion in the world will need to be reskilled by 2030. So these statistics prove us that acquiring future skills we need both for personal growth and to serve our customers on a professional basis. Is beyond like it's like a program. It is a mindset we will need to embrace to create a culture of continuous growth where we, all of us, including the panelists, including everyone who has joined, including the youth in this country, to stay curious to learn and new skills and proactively navigate our career within the organization that we are in, right? So thinking these in quite seriously from organizational point of view, HSBC has identified that reskilling, upskilling the existing workforce as an employer is needed for their own existence for the future jobs that the world will have, including the financial sector or any other sector. And how do we upskill the existing employers that we have? So in order to do that, what we have identified is identification of the future skills is very important. So this is the bit I really wanted to stress for the youth who has joined this webinar, to say that what is the skill that we would need in the future to succeed in some of the job opportunities that we have, either in government or private sector. So I'm talking in the context of HSBC, right? The first one to think about is the nature of the work transforming more rapidly than ever before, right? Second is the type of the jobs that exist now and the future can be very different and sometimes difficult to predict as well. So equipping the employees with the skills needed to thrive in an increasing volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment will be critical. COVID is a good test of that for all of us, right? Employees now and in the future will need to have more learning agility. This is a new term that we used, learning agility. That means that they are aware and adaptable to change. And of course, as we move to 2030 onwards, it will be a different world with different new jobs and different new capability. So some of the capabilities I just wanted to highlight because that would interest the audience in terms of what do I need to kind of excel myself from a organizational point of view when I apply for jobs. So these are some of the skills that HSBC, we also reskill our existing employees, give opportunity for them to reskill themselves to ready for the future as we move along. So one element I would say is curiosity, the desire to understand basically how and why. So example, sense of thinking, our cognitive management, um, computational thinking, etc., the analytical skills. One of the other element when we move to the future will be creativity. What kind of a design mindset you have, novel and adaptive thinking, etc., right? The other would be is connectivity, right? We are far more connected now through all the platforms and digitalization that have. So how much of social intelligence that we have as an individual to do our jobs in the
Really is
private
there.
or other sector,
I have to
right?
ask you to wrap up.
Sorry?
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Yes. So that's kind of some of the stuff which I would like to highlight in terms of doing that. So in the second part, if I take a 1 minute, Aishka, on some of the reskilling activity that we do as part of a society would be, uh, one is in three elements, IT literacy. So we have worked with schools relief initiatives to reskill around young 2000 odd young people in terms of how do we use IT skills, practical sense. The curriculum is more theoretical. How do we do that practical sense? The second element we are focusing working with the society as an organization is English literacy, working with the organization called CBB, Council for British and Britain Committee members, with the approval from Ministry of Education to over 2,000 teachers have been trained, especially on how to use Zoom and whatnot, as well as some of the students. Then the third and the most important element that we are focusing on working with the society is the financial literacy. So we have done some projects with enhancing financial literacy in the garment sector employees, about 2,600, as well as a 3-year project with World Vision on some of 1,500 identified individuals in areas like Moondalama, Valapane, Valachene, in order to increase their financial literacy. We are also doing things in terms of how to increase entrepreneurial mindset. So these are some of the stuff I would like to share in terms of how do we upskill in the society in general.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Pereira, and for talking about the concrete actions that HSBC is also taking towards reskilling and upskilling communities. I have a few questions that I'd like to get back to at some point later on in the Q&A discussion. May I now move on to Mr. Yasas Abeyvikrama, the Policy Programs Manager for Sri Lanka at Facebook, to provide his views on developing not only digital literacy skills, but also digital citizenship as a way forward for the country.
Thanks, Ayushka, and thanks to UNDP and the other organizers and partners for having Facebook involved in this program. This is the second year running for us to support UNDP's Hacker Day as well as the National Youth Dialogue. So it has been a pleasure to partner with many organizations in this program. So I would like to touch on a few things that we believe are important in this digital age, and also touch on digital citizenship, as Ayushka you mentioned. So as we know, in Sri Lanka, we have a population of about 4.4 million young people, and there is immense potential to learn, grow, and make valuable contributions to the society. It is important to learn skills that will help land good jobs. It is also equally important to learn the right skills to navigate the challenges that life would throw at us. And in this fast changing world, the required skills are also changing. The youth needs to adapt and learn fast, whether they are still studying, looking for jobs, or planning to build their own businesses, enterprises, startups, etc. It is also no surprise that we are becoming an increasingly digital world. The new generation is already skilled at creating and connecting. They are growing up around rapidly changing and evolving technologies. There are platforms like ours, Facebook and Instagram, where they can build community and share the content they create or like. We are becoming an increasingly digital world. Especially after COVID, we all experienced how people had to move online to digital platforms, and this will not go back. You know, people will still use a significant amount of digital platforms and digital means, even in a post-COVID world. So at Facebook, we train young people with the skills that they need to become more responsible digital citizens as well, in addition to digital literacy skills. This is where digital skills or digital literacy skills, as well as digital citizenship, becomes important. Digital citizenship, what we mean by digital citizenship is how we navigate our privileges and obligations in this new space. Not just the skills side of it, but the attitude, and also to be a good digital citizen. As we know, in our educational system, from the school curriculum as well as the ecosystem, you would teach most of the offline citizenship skills or values that they need to have. However, now with more and more people moving to digital platforms, it is important that they understand digital citizenship, or what are the attitudes that they need to have when navigating the digital space as well. So this is where digital citizenship becomes important in the coming years. It is how we decipher and share information we have access to, and most importantly, how we interact with other people. We all play a part in creating responsible digital citizens and build a brighter digital future. So sometimes we see people use digital platforms irresponsibly, and that is partly them not being proper digital citizens, and that responsibility is on all of us to inculcate in citizens in the future. Young people have a role both offline and online, and they have to have right values and attitudes in both these spaces. So we've tried to do this in practice in Sri Lanka in various ways. As you know, Facebook is about building and bringing communities together. So all these programs that I will mention around these areas have an element of community development in Sri Lanka and skills development at scale. As you know, our platform is platforms, Instagram, Facebook are used by many people. So the programs that we try to do also are at scale. Like it's not for smaller numbers, because we want to see all of Sri Lanka or vast majority of Sri Lankans youth understanding these important digital skills as well as the attitudes that they need to have. So some examples as to how we do this in the last couple of years. So last year, we Facebook in partnership with ICTA as well as Ministry of Education and Sarvodaya Fusion, we launched We Think Digital program in Sri Lanka. This is a global digital literacy program that has resources on digital skills that help people think critically and share thoughtfully online. Through this initiative, we are helping develop skills that enable Sri Lankans to create a positive and safe culture online. So this program at the moment is live. The aim is to train 10,000 young people around digital skills, digital literacy skills, but also topping up with certain digital citizenship skills that they need to they need to have, that I mentioned before. Before this program, before this We Think Digital program that is running now, we also trained about 25,000 students in schools around digital safety under the IT Yahamaga program. The topics covered in that program included privacy, safety, security, digital discourse, and also understanding the digital footprint. Youth needs to understand that there's a digital footprint. The things that you do online sometimes stays there, and then sometimes when you move to different spaces in life, that can have an impact as well. So sometimes people don't have an understanding of what the future impact could be. So telling them how they need to think about having that digital footprint right, and also creating the right digital profile for them online is something that we think is important. Along these lines, we are launching a new program with the Vocational Training Authority this month, actually on 17th of March. This is under VTA's Be Pro, like become a professional program, as well as Facebook's We Think Digital program objectives. Facebook and VTA will support a Train the Trainer program for 1,300 trainers across the country that VTA has to help them become more digitally savvy. Through this initiative, we also hope to help improve the skills of trainers, which will have an impact on all vocational students in Sri Lanka in the future. As I said, we are about scale. So by training the trainers of Damita's organization, we hope to have an impact towards all vocational students in Sri Lanka going forward. In addition to these areas, we are also committed to digital skills around using our platforms for business and entrepreneurship purposes by youth. In this context, we have worked closely with ICT agency to train small business owners, entrepreneurs, youth, and women entrepreneurs on how the platform can be used effectively for their business purposes. These are some of the skills that we need in the age of digital. And these programs have been running for a while, and we see very positive results in transforming youth, women entrepreneurs, especially on the ground. Sometimes we see people who have businesses, say for example, someone makes handicrafts, and their market is not just Sri Lanka, their market is overseas. How do you use platforms like ours to reach those markets? I have a good example, someone who makes handicrafts in Corona. His market is pretty much European market, and it's entirely through Facebook that he reaches the market. So these are some of the examples, but people need to have those skills. So our responsibility is to help the society, youth, with getting those skills, because one problem that we need to address together, VTA, UNDP, ourselves, is to how we can give these skills, because school curriculum doesn't necessarily cover some of these things as well. And if someone comes from a different field and wants to use digital skills for, say, marketing purposes or reaching out to different markets around the world, we need to help them to acquire those skills. So these are some of the things that we are really concerned about, committed to, and have practical programs running in Sri Lanka to achieve those objectives. Around the same theme in terms of supporting small business owners and youth entrepreneurs on recovering from COVID impact. We are launching a new program in late this month to equip them with necessary skills in using our platforms better on their businesses, so that they can kind of come back to their business, or especially around the new year, traditionally we are out of the period where usually small businesses make reasonable business. If we can help them to use that time to kind of create a turning point and come back into business, that will be useful for to our people, especially with the impact from COVID. So these are some of the things that we are working on. So broadly, Facebook has been working with various partners, including UNDP in Sri Lanka for the last 2 years, especially. We are excited to see all the innovative and effective youth leadership activities that UNDP and our partners are carrying out. We hope to continue collaborating on various efforts to support social innovation, skill building, and entrepreneurship. We hope to help build more aware and responsible digital communities for positive impact. And the youth will play a big role in this effort. And today's generation will determine the future direction of innovation in Sri Lanka. So with that, I would like to hand it back to Ayushka. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasas, and so sorry for cutting you off multiple times. And thank you for that. I know we talk a lot about civic skills and we talk a lot about digital literacy skills, but we often don't look at the intersection between the two, which is, as you said, extremely important in given the use of social media and technology in today's world. May I now invite Mr. Manish Joshi from the Education Sector team at the UNESCO New Delhi office to provide a regional perspective to the conversation, especially on what has actually worked for India so far.
Thank you, Ayushka. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think some very valid points already made. So yeah, I think at the outset, I will just say that learning from other contexts is very important. And I think these lessons, of course, need to be taken with a pinch of salt. You have to see how well they fit. But I think it's very important and relevant because I see many similarities, in the sub-region. So for instance, between India and, neighboring countries. And yeah, the UNESCO Cluster Office, of course, works and supports a bunch of these countries together. So it's interesting because in 2020 December, which was just a few months ago, we released an important, in fact, the flagship report for our office. It's called the State of the Education Report for India. And in 2020, the edition was focused on technical and vocational education. And in that report, we made a constructive, a positive look at a review of what's happened in the last 10-15 years in India and what's the way forward. And perhaps I can share some of those interesting recommendations and try and see why they may be relevant for Sri Lanka. So getting started, I think the first and one of the most important things we realized as we look back at what's happened in Tibet in India is to really recognize that Tibet needs to be, when I say Tibet, I mean technical and vocational education and training. That's the acronym we often use. You can call it skills development also. It's similar. And I think it's important to make the skills and TVET programs much more learner-centered. So really placing learners and their aspirations at the heart of the programming for vocational education and training. I think it's very important. Now, what does it mean? I think it simply means that learners who may potentially enter TVET programs, vocational training programs, they need to be made aware of what their natural talents are. So a lot of times it's a step back. Are we doing enough vocational aptitude tests and coupling them with the career guidance, which is very important. And these we feel are key support measures that are absolutely worth investing in, but they have to be made available to all learners. I mean, in small pockets, you'll find that some may have access to such programs, but not all. So I think this is very important. And I think when learners are able, if they're not aware of the career and learning pathways, that such training programs or vocational education programs can open for them, how do we then expect them to make a good decision whether or not to enter such a program? So I think it's very important to help learners in this journey through aptitude testing, through guidance. And I think the other related point is that, for example, in India, the big shift in the coming years would be to have more and more school-based TVET. By that, I mean that, I'm emphasizing vocational education more over vocational training, because sometimes they're used interchangeably. But I think that there is a difference, because a lot of times vocational training is seen as a quick fix, to prepare a skilled workforce. And it's the same, I think in India, we have the same issue. We have millions of people who are not gainfully employed, and there are opportunities. But at the same time, we have to recognize that it's not a long-term solution. And the long-term solution is perhaps vocational education, where the key is exposure, which starts much early on in schools. So in the new education policy in India, for example, there's a very ambitious target that's aiming to actually make vocational education available to all learners from grade 6 onwards. And I think that's important. I think there is a lot of merit in, at least, we're not saying that grade 6 you start training people and pushing them to choose occupations, but I think the early exposure is important. And that early exposure, I think, can help in one of the biggest challenges, I think, which skills and TVET faces across the world, I think not only in Asia, is the image of TVET. And I think this image, this poor image, is something that can only be in a sustainable long-term way tackled when you give early exposure and actually help people see why this is an equally good pathway. So everybody doesn't have to enter. Not all students and learners perhaps are even fit to enter higher education. And if they discover their bent of mind early on, perhaps they can take another pathway. So I think that's important. Second, I would say, somewhat related, making skills, vocational education and skills training much more practical and hands-on. And I think here I'm emphasizing, the shift from a more classroom-oriented to a more work-based learning and more apprenticeship-oriented programs. And this is very important because I think the evidence clearly shows that across the world, work-based learning and apprenticeship-oriented skills programs have much better outcomes. And I think that's another problem, because if we don't show robust outcomes, financing, policy support, everything would suffer. So I think it's very important to move. When I say outcome, I mean, when you move towards a job after any kind of educational or training program, it's proven that apprenticeship programs actually have a much better, more efficient transition to a job. So can we do more to encourage this transition to work-based learning? And here, I think the government has to work very closely with the private sector, because I already heard a lot of emphasis based on what private sector is doing, is recognizing. But as a, for example, in some countries, private sector organizes itself in the form of sector skill councils. So we have to not only encourage private sector to come forward and offer, for example, apprenticeship positions and invest in, building this skills dividend for the young people, but also get them, for example, to participate in the process of standard setting. So is the industry coming forward and do they have a say in how and what needs to be imparted in a training program? Because, this mismatch often exists that, by the time somebody reaches the industry turns around and says, but, we didn't really need these skills. So if you engage them early on in this process of standard setting, occupational standards, so are there mechanisms in place that actually encourage, they welcome industry to, say what skills are needed and what kind of standards they need? And I think in this way, they have a skin in the game, which is very important. Third, I would say another important aspect of, maybe I'll just take a minute to wrap up. I would just say an ecosystem for teachers and trainers for skills, because it's a similar problem like in any level of education, but a lot of people who are facilitating this whole process of skilling are not, their recruitment, their induction, deployment, working conditions, career prospects, are we paying enough attention? I think it's a very important part. And then, of course, I think digitalization we've already spoken about. And I've also seen some interesting initiatives from Sri Lanka, because a skills passport system for migrant workers introduced. But maybe the next level will be to fully digitalize it. So, moving to a system where the skills passports are, running, for example, on blockchain, remote assessments, remote hiring, verification of credentials, everything happens digitally. I think that's important. And finally, I would say just a view on innovative financing. COVID has already put a lot of strain on the financing available, because a lot of skill programs are funded by the government. So governments are under pressure, learners are equally under pressure. So can we look at more innovative financing mechanisms which can move away from 100% government finance programs? But I'm suggesting things like development impact bonds, right? Where you have a collaboration of 3 stakeholders. So you have somebody who takes the risk, you have a service provider, you have an outcome funder, or skill vouchers, for example. So I think there's a real need to look at, in skills and in technical and vocational education, more innovative financing. And also, I think innovative financing can improve outcomes, again, going back to my earlier point. So I'll stop here and happy to take any questions. Thank you once again.
Thank you for that, Manish. And what you said was absolutely pertinent. A lot of the initiatives that we were talking about in terms of introducing career guidance, etc., come up quite often in the Presidential Task Force on Education's recommendations for education reform for Sri Lanka as well. So it was good to hear that these things have been introduced in India and that they seem to be working as well. With that, I would like to move into the Q&A session. We've received a few questions via the chat box, so thank you to the participants for engaging with us. To kick off, since we were just talking about career guidance, a question has come in that's addressed to Namita on what his take is on career guidance at the grassroots level. So introducing career guidance, for example, at the VTAs, at the village level VTAs or national VTAs. Is that something that the government is interested in furthering?
Of course, as I mentioned before, skills development is a major focus of HE President and this current administration. And on career guidance and promotional activities on Excellency's direct guidance and instructions itself, VTA has started a program called VTA Gamingamata, where we go to the villages of every district. At least every district we select 6 to 8 locations, which are rural locations, and give them the information as well as the career guidance, as well as we give a sort of a understanding and knowledge sharing session on the current job markets of the world, not even Sri Lanka. And also 20 large-scale private sector organizations have tied up with us, and they have sort of a career guidance as well as recruitment program going parallelly. I think now currently we successfully conducted our 5th program in Trincomalee alongside with HE President's Gama Samaga Pilisandara. After that event, we had another 3 days of extensive, traveling and, hosting these events. And also the Vocational Training Authority has been given by the USAID affiliated organization ULEAD fully fledged career guidance bus which will kickstart an island-wide tour from 8th March onwards from the district of Matara. So it's basically covering the all four corners of Sri Lanka, and it will be sort of a roadshow alongside the current Gamingamata program that we have.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Damita. And I mean, what you said, I had a question to raise as well on the role of the private sector in actually, you know, linking up with the VTA and the VTA's programs concretely. And what you said in terms of their contribution to career guidance is really important.
Ayushka, we lost your connection.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Hi, sorry.
We can hear you.
Sorry, I lost you in between. I think there was a problem with the connection.
So sorry. No, I said that what you said about how the private sector is intervening with regard to career guidance in the work of the VTA is really important, and also links to a question that I had on that was linked to what Ms. Deepa said about the need for private sector matching of skills between the courses that the VTA is offering. So I'm really glad to hear that that is happening to an extent. We have a question in the chat box that's also addressed to you. So I'm going to ask you this right now on whether you can elaborate on the areas of the 10 industrial parks in the upcountry region, which areas of skills that they're looking at.
Well, it's a concept of the Honorable Minister Jeevan Thondaman. There are not any physical locations identified as yet, but basically the idea is to have a feeding vocational center for that particular, you know, industrial park. And that is a model we are assessing with the Board of Investment as well, where, you know, now most of the, you know, constraints in terms of sorting investments, as you said, on the 4IR platform is the, you know, lack of skill of our labor workforce. So for that, we are in discussions with the Board of Investment as well, where how we can, you know, sort of come into the supply chain, where they have specific, you know, industry related parks. And the first instance will happen in the pharmaceutical manufacturing farm. They have a zone in Hambantota. So VTA has already, you know, started developing curriculum, and we will be an active part in that industrial facility. Whether we will be based there or not, we will be a feeding, you know, organization for this pharmaceutical industry. So likewise, we are looking at other industries also, how we can, you know, synergize and, you know, be a major player in the supply chain. Because one of the biggest issues for the corporates in Sri Lanka is to not to find the sufficient workforce, but to find the sufficient skilled workforce. So now the current pharma industry, they are all the, you know, the association came and met me, and they, in fact, it's their brainchild. Then I took it up to BOI also. They were also very much accommodative. And that is one industry we are going to start very soon. And also in future, this industrial park integrated vocational training model, that is just an idea that we are assessing, but it will become a reality, because now in the upcountry, we will run the pilot program with Minister Thondaman. So basically, I am not in a position to...
Because webinar ke enna mic
So sorry about that slight technical difficulties. We're receiving more questions from the audience, which I'm afraid are still addressed to you, Damita. But I can open it to Ms. Deepa as well. Both the questions pertain with regard to searching for work overseas once they've been trained here. The first question is with regard to whether there's a system that actually links people that are trained here with employers abroad. And the second question pertains to whether anyone will be able to access these overseas jobs, or whether there's some kind of criteria, or how this is actually going to proceed.
Ayushka, before Deepa gives her remarks on this question, let me add to that first. Now, currently, the model we are assessing is we get the skilled labor in place, and this Foreign Employment Bureau is another party that will be getting involved, as well as the foreign employment agent on ground in Sri Lanka and the receiving foreign employment agent in the receiving country. So it will be a multi-party agreement, as well as we are discussing with several state banks, because there's a cost factor involved. Not only the training to get there, and there are certain, levies and fees that one has to, entertain. So it will be from the training up to, getting all the necessary financial assistance, as well as getting them, employed on ground itself in the receiving country.
And you mentioned that these agreements are being worked on with Japan, Korea, and you mentioned Romania as well.
All these countries have come into agreement with the government of Sri Lanka, but we are working mostly through the private sector, because the government alone cannot do all this job placement. But when you say private sector, we ensure that the Bureau is also involved as a party to the agreement. If not, we don't want any, unwanted issues arising once they, get employed in the receiving country. We want to ensure that all the necessary stakeholders are in the agreement itself.
Yes, adding something to the matters explained by Damita. Actually, I as implementing, implementing support for the ministry. They are doing having good collaboration with the Foreign Employment Bureau. So, as a Ministry of the Skills Development and Vocational Education sector, we recently had a MOU with the Foreign Employment Ministry. So, in order to place this mechanism in a better position, that's I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deepa. I have a question with regard to something that I think Manish brought up with regard to perceptions around technical and vocational training. A lot of the things that were brought up by the panel were things that were very supply side, were things such as increasing the number of centers and hoping for an increase in the number of school enrollments into these TVET centers. But is there anything that can be done to shift perceptions about technical and vocational training, which is not really seen as a very prestigious avenue for people to follow? Most people want to follow, tertiary education and go straight into universities or even straight into work. There's generally a perception that technical and vocational training is not very prestigious. If any panelists have any perspective on how to actually change and shift these attitudes?
I think sorry, Deepa, you can go ahead.
So I just wanted to explain you that we totally agree, and during the deliberations of the presidential task force, we really observed that situation, because people, and especially the parents, they are a little reluctant to send their children to the vocational sector education. So that's why we are now taken several initiatives to uplift the sector, vocational education sector. So that is why we wanted to recognize it as a skills development sector. That is why we called our national program as the Skills Sri Lanka National Program. So we put more emphasis on skills development and the entrepreneurship development together with skills development. So over to you, Chamila.
Thanks, Deepa. So I was just trying to say, from a private sector point of view, the perception of what the authority or the body who providing this skill development, more than that, the message should be what the skill that I wanted to do, and then how would that apply to the job that I wanted to do in the future, right? So I wanted to make a kind of a statement to say that the attitude as well as the focus of where do I want to be as an individual is much more much needs to give much more attention and value from the individual point of view to see that what's the skill that I need, right? That depending on that, the solutions available, you could pick either vocational or otherwise, or you join the task force and subsequently you get skilled, right? So certain jobs you can straight away from your secondary education, you can get into. So sometimes on the individuals that we see, the people that we interview, the focus of where do I want to be lacks. And that's something question I would put to all the 209 in the attendees. Have you thought about that so that the other solutions will come through?
If I could,
Ayushka, if you don't mind, can I just add a little thought on that?
Absolutely, yes.
Now, basically, Ayushka, what we have to overcome or breach is the social stigma. Even in society in general, within the parents' mindset and teachers even, getting into the vocational industries like going down in life, right? For that, now classic example is before I took over, the payoff line of VTA was Godeyan Ekwanna, which itself gives you a very rowdish sort of sort of feeling. So then what we did was, like Yasas mentioned during his remarks, now currently we have changed the payoff to B Pro. We want to build the brand of the technician. If not, we have to make him a superstar of society. And luckily, one of Sri Lanka's past cricketing star has agreed to come on board as the brand ambassador, which names cannot be disclosed because we have not signed the agreement as yet. So that is the exercise we are taking. You have to build the image of the technician first and breach that social stigma.
Absolutely. And I completely agree that people that are already well versed in these technical skills are already the superstars of society, because without these skills, society will collapse. So I think that's really important to hear as well. I'm just going to
if I
ask
could quickly add.
Yes, sure, Manish.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on this point of having role models in society which people look up to, and I think that is an important way to change the image. And one specific example linked to that is the use of skilling competitions. I'm sure Sri Lanka already participates in World Skills, for example, which is the Olympic for skills globally. But I think regional, local, national level skill competitions, which kind of build this funnel, it actually encourages young people to come forward. And I think now we're also seeing, for example, extending these skilling competitions to schools. So, young people start tinkering with ideas, start developing their skills, showcasing them. And from a policy perspective, I think it's important because sometimes the skills in the vocational training sector is seen as a dead end. So if the integration with higher education, for instance, because pathways can go in many directions, if that is improved and there are no dead ends, then people getting into technical and vocational education today know that tomorrow this can actually, there is an option at least for them to move on and then get linked with higher education and then branch off in another career. But if it's a dead end, it sends of course a not so enthusiastic signal. So I think it's important to work on that, broadening the pathways and connections with higher education.
Absolutely. And I think that's an aspect we couldn't really touch on in this conversation about how accreditation is actually really important for people that actually go through this vocational and technical education. I'm just going to ask one last question that has been posed by the audience before we start to wrap up. The question is how well the current skills development programs are delivered at present through virtual learning places, etc. And do we see that there's a vacuum building up due to the pandemic with regard to skills development programs being delivered at present? I believe that question should go to either Yasas or Damita.
I can add from our perspective. We've moved almost all our programs online at the moment, like whether it's skills for entrepreneurs, youth entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, or even digital literacy, digital citizenship. So we've moved most of them online. One program that we are working with, VTA, has a hybrid model where we will deliver certain parts offline certain parts online. But right now, given the pandemic, our thinking is to do things online. And one, it is the responsible way to do so. Second, we are also thinking of transforming people, and this pandemic is an opportunity to do that, because we all, the society was pushed to go online and move to a digital world. So this is an opportunity to embrace in that context.
Completely agree.
Just to add the VTA experience, Ayushka, now in terms of training, we are struggling a little bit. It's not a matter of, delivering online. We are teaching hands-on skills. For instance, to repair an engine, to work on a, hard-on skill, it's very difficult to teach online. But we have started a YouTube channel called Skills TV, and Yasas and Facebook has been very, generous in supporting us, especially popularizing and providing us free ad credit. I must thank him for that, of course. But then again, there is a limit to which you can, deliver vocational skills online. But we are on it. And probably in the future, we might have to look at augmented learning where, through virtual reality and, sort of, hands-on experience, sort of, augmented training methodology to adapt it. So hopefully we can get there in the future.
Thank you, Damita. I mean, it's good to know that VTA is looking at exploring those different pathways of learning as well, just in case in-person training is not possible for the foreseeable future. With that, I would like to wrap the panel discussion up. I would like each panelist to close by, given the fact that most of our audience are primarily youth, as well as the fact that this event is being streamed at several vocational training centers across the country, I'd like to invite each panelist to close with a key message that they would like to give these participants. One key takeaway, given today's discussion on what the future of work will look like and what they should take away from this. Thank you.
Let me go first. Sorry.
Thank you. As from the Ministry of Skills Development, Vocational Education and Research and Innovation, I would like to give the message to all youth in the country that don't let your young age to be wasted. Just join with vocational sector, and there are lots of opportunities, especially even for the higher education, not only NVQ levels, NVQ 3, 4, 5, 6, and also university level. Now we are starting soon the skills universities, that is city universities. That's a message from the ministry. Thank you.
What I would like to say is have a curious, creative mindset, open mindset to learn and to change, an open mindset to change. The world is going to change. It's not the way we live today. So you need to be open and creative to welcome that. That would be my message. And thank you again for inviting me for this session.
Thank you, Pamela.
Yeah, if I go next, my message would be, I assume most of you are already studying a skill at VTA or such a training institute. If not, it's important that you have something strong or something solid for you to kind of go forward into the future. However, in addition to developing that skill, I think it is also important to understand that the world is changing as a place today. Digital is becoming mainstream. Even if you were a motor mechanic, even if you were in certain other skill, yes, that is in a ways something that is not directly connected to digital, but digital probably has some role in helping you in going forward. Say, for example, if you wanted to do that as a business, then digital might be important. If you wanted to talk to your customers, then digital comes into play. So digital has a role. So my message would be to understand what your skill area is, what the career prospect is, and how that would couple in the future with digital, and developing an attitudes towards embracing digital as well, and that would help you to get some of those digital skills. And if you have the right attitude, I think you would go and get those skills. Some of the digital skills that you need, like the basic ones, are not that difficult. So alongside that main skill base that you're developing, having that right attitude to go digital is also important, and that will be important for us to make a more innovative and entrepreneurial society. Say VTA and other vocational sector organizations who develop all these skilled people, we may not have jobs for all of them. They would have to develop their own businesses as well. They would have to export things. We want more exports from this country, and for that you need to use digital platforms as well. So
Absolutely.
that's
Thank
where the future is. That's my final message. Thank you
Thank
for the opportunity.
Manish, I saw you. Sorry, Damita, would you like to?
Last, Manish, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just say, being resilient is often underrated. So it was a difficult year, last year. Things are improving. So I think I would just end on an optimistic note. Be resilient, reflect, take the time out to reflect a little bit, see what you're good at. It could be a passion, it could be a hobby. And follow the natural path, try and develop something that you already are good at, already interested in. Take the time to reflect, and perhaps you will not need to try too hard to develop a career. I think hobbies and passions can often become careers, and perhaps that's the best way. So take the time, whenever you can, to reflect, and you will find that everything, being your own boss is not a bad option either. So be open to possibilities, and distinguish yourself. Don't go on a path that's often taken. Try something new. Yeah, that's my message.
Thanks, Manish.
Yeah, as my closing remark, I would like to tell the youth of Sri Lanka. First of all, there is plenty of knowledge available. Decide, look into it, decide your career, and ensure that you get enrolled into a training stream or a career that you have passion for. Otherwise, everything goes waste. Your time, the government's investment, and all of that will go in waste if you don't have the passion for it. So ensure that you have a passion for it. Then along the way, decide yourself whether you want to get employed in Sri Lanka, or whether you want to go and work in overseas, or whether you want to become an entrepreneur. So ultimately, what matters is you becoming a professional. So be pro.
Great. Thank you so much to all the panelists for their great insights and words of wisdom. And thank you so much to all the participants for their active participation throughout the session. The next session, which is on navigating your digital classroom, will begin at 2:50. So if anyone is interested, you can join through the link that they have posted on the chat. Hope everybody has a great afternoon ahead, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.